I stood in Daniel's corner office watching HR pack up his belongings while he cleared out his desk in shame. Just 3 days ago, he'd humiliated me at the Halloween party, calling my glass ceiling costume inappropriate and too political. Little did he know that his own phone contained evidence that would shatter more than just my carefully crafted plastic sheets. My name is Laura Bennett, and at 28, I thought I understood how the corporate world worked. 4 years at Morrison & Associates marketing firm had taught me that talent mattered, dedication paid off, and hard work eventually got noticed. Well, I was wrong about pretty much everything. I spent those years perfecting client presentations until 2 in the morning. I redesigned campaigns that landed us million-dollar contracts. I watched less experienced male colleagues get promoted while I remained stuck in the same cubicle, watching the same motivational posters about teamwork and excellence. The irony wasn't lost on me. Then came the announcement that crushed whatever naive optimism I had left. The creative director position I'd been working toward for 2 years. It went to Jake Morrison, Daniel's nephew, who'd been with the company exactly 8 months. 8 months versus my 4 years of proven results. Makes sense, right? That's when I decided to make a statement. Our annual Halloween party was legendary at Morrison & Associates. People went all out with costumes, and the tradition encouraged creativity and fun. Previous years had seen everything from elaborate superhero outfits to group themes that took weeks to coordinate. But this year, I wanted something different, something meaningful. I spent 3 weeks crafting my masterpiece. Clear plastic sheets arranged like a dome over my shoulders, carefully painted with realistic cracks spreading across the surface. The pièce de résistance was a bright red sign attached to the front, fragile, handle with care. My glass ceiling costume was both artistic and pointed, a visual representation of what I faced every day at work. My colleagues had mixed reactions during the planning stages. Sarah from accounting thought it was brilliant and bold. Marcus from IT worried I might be pushing boundaries too far. But I felt confident in my choice. The costume sparked conversations about workplace equality, exactly what I'd hoped for. Morrison & Associates operated like most mid-sized companies, but underneath the surface diversity posters and equal opportunity policies, something else was happening. Certain managers shared inside jokes that excluded others. Decisions seemed to get made in closed-door meetings that somehow never included women. Female employees noticed these patterns, whispered about them during lunch breaks, but we lacked concrete evidence. Daniel Morrison, the 45-year-old managing partner, ran the company with an iron fist wrapped in superficial charm. He had this way of making controlling behavior seem like concern for company culture. When he walked into a room, conversations shifted. People straightened up, smiled a little too widely, and chose their words more carefully. The boys' club atmosphere was subtle but persistent. Golf outings that happened to include only male managers, client dinners where somehow the women never got invited, promotion discussions that took place during these exclusive gatherings, leaving half the qualified candidates out of consideration entirely. My costume creation process became a form of artistic rebellion. Each crack I painted represented a barrier I'd encountered. Every carefully placed plastic sheet symbolized another invisible obstacle that kept talented women from advancing. The fragile warning wasn't about weakness. It was about a system so delicate that honest conversation might shatter it completely. Looking back, I realize how prophetic that costume would prove to be. But at the time, I just wanted to spark meaningful dialogue about advancement opportunities and workplace equality. I wanted my colleagues to see the barriers that weren't visible to everyone, to understand why talented people sometimes remained stuck despite their best efforts. The anticipation building toward the Halloween party felt electric. I'd put everything into this costume, this moment, this chance to make a statement without directly confronting anyone. It seemed like the perfect way to address serious issues while maintaining professional relationships. What I didn't know was that my carefully crafted artistic expression would trigger a chain of events that would expose something far more sinister than I'd ever imagined. The glass ceiling I was protesting against was about to reveal just how fragile it really was. The Halloween party started exactly like every other Morrison and Associates celebration. Fake cobwebs draped across the conference room. Orange and black balloons bobbed from every corner. Someone had put way too much effort into a haunted office theme, complete with skeleton decorations posed at empty desks. I walked in wearing my glass ceiling costume with confidence I didn't know I possessed. The plastic sheets caught the light perfectly, creating this ethereal dome effect around my shoulders. Those painted cracks looked incredibly realistic, like actual fractures spreading across invisible barriers. My fragile handle with care sign swayed gently as I moved through the crowd. The initial reactions were everything I'd hoped for. Sarah from accounting rushed over immediately, practically gushing about how clever and meaningful my costume was. Marcus from IT nodded approvingly and said it was thought-provoking art. Even some of the senior staff members engaged in genuine conversations about workplace advancement and equal opportunities. For about 30 minutes, everything was perfect. Then Daniel Morrison entered the room, and I watched his expression change from casual party mood to something much darker. His eyes locked onto my costume, scanning the plastic dome, reading my sign, processing what I was trying to say. The shift in his demeanor was immediate and unmistakable. He didn't approach me right away. Instead, he worked the room like he always did, shaking hands and making small talk with various employees. But I could feel his attention on me, this weighted presence that made the plastic sheets suddenly feel heavier on my shoulders. 20 minutes later, he made his move. "Laura," Daniel's voice carried across the room, cutting through conversations like a knife through paper. Every head turned. The music seemed to get quieter. "Could you come here for a moment?" Walking toward him felt like approaching a predator. My costume rattled softly with each step, those painted cracks seeming more ominous now than artistic. When I reached him, Daniel had positioned himself near the center of the party, ensuring maximum audience for whatever was about to happen. "That's quite a costume you've chosen," he said, his tone deceptively casual. "Very political." "It's artistic expression," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I thought it would spark some interesting workplace conversations." Daniel's laugh had zero warmth in it. Interesting, I'd call it inappropriate. Divisive to company morale. We're here to celebrate Halloween, not create tension among colleagues. The room had gone completely silent now. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how this would play out. My face burned with embarrassment, but I pushed forward anyway. "I don't think discussing workplace equality creates tension," I said. "These are legitimate professional topics." "Are they?" Daniel stepped closer, using his height to intimidate me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone with an attitude problem is trying to cause trouble at a company party. The public humiliation was working exactly as he'd planned. I could see coworkers shifting uncomfortably, some looking away entirely to avoid being part of this confrontation. A few supportive colleagues started to speak up, but Daniel's authority silenced them with just a glance. "Maybe this explains why you haven't advanced in the company," he continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Poor judgment. Inability to read appropriate social situations. These aren't management qualities, Laura." Those words hit like physical blows. Standing there in my carefully crafted costume, surrounded by silent coworkers, I felt smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. The plastic dome that was supposed to represent breaking barriers suddenly felt like a prison, trapping me in this moment of public shame. "I think you should go home and reconsider whether this costume reflects the professional image Morrison and Associates expects from its employees," Daniel said with finality. I left the party that night questioning everything. Was my costume really inappropriate? Had I crossed a professional line? Was Daniel right about my judgment being poor? The self-doubt crept in like poison, making me wonder if maybe I deserved to be stuck in that cubicle after all. But Daniel wasn't finished with me. The next Monday morning, I found a meeting request in my inbox. HR wanted to see me immediately. Sarah Chen, our HR director, looked uncomfortable as she explained that Daniel had filed a formal complaint against me for unprofessional conduct and creating a hostile work environment at the Halloween party. "He's requesting disciplinary action," Sarah said quietly. "He also submitted a written statement suggesting that your behavior demonstrates why you're not suitable for management positions." The injustice of it made my chest tight with anger. I'd worn a costume that sparked conversations about workplace equality, and somehow I was the one creating a hostile environment? The irony would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my career. Sarah assured me that HR would conduct a thorough investigation. She interviewed party attendees, reviewed company policies regarding personal expression, and documented every detail of the incident. What started as a simple complaint review began expanding into something much larger as other employees felt safe sharing their own experiences with management's treatment of female staff. Then came the request that would change everything. "We need to examine Daniel's company phone," Sarah explained during one of our follow-up meetings. "We're looking for any party-related communications that might provide context for his complaint against you." I agreed, thinking this would help clear my name. Daniel had made such a big deal about my costume being inappropriate that surely his private communications would reflect genuine concern about company policy, right? The next day, Sarah called me into her office again. Her face was pale, and her hands shook slightly as she placed a thick folder on the desk between us. "Laura," she said carefully, "we found something on Daniel's phone. Something that changes everything about this investigation." The folder contained printed screenshots from a group chat called the Evaluation Committee. Daniel and 3 other male managers had been sharing messages that made my stomach turn. They rated female employees' physical appearance like they were judging livestock. They shared photos taken secretly at company events, including upskirt shots from previous Halloween parties. They coordinated explicitly to keep women out of leadership positions. The messages about me were particularly revealing. Daniel had written, "Laura's getting too ambitious. We need to keep her in her place. No promotions for attitude problems." Another message from 2 months ago read, "She's talented but thinks too much. Women like that are dangerous in management." 2 years of evidence, multiple victims, a systematic conspiracy to discriminate against, half the workforce, documented in their own words with photographic evidence of criminal behavior. My glass ceiling costume hadn't been too political after all. It had been prophetic. These men had built their own fragile system of control, and now it was about to shatter completely. The investigation Sarah mentioned would expose everything, but that's where the real story begins. 3 weeks later, I was standing in Daniel's former office while he packed his personal belongings into cardboard boxes. The irony was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. The man who'd humiliated me for wearing a political costume was now facing federal charges for running an actual conspiracy. The executive board held an emergency session the day after HR finished their investigation. Sarah Chen walked into that boardroom carrying a folder that would change everything. The evidence wasn't just overwhelming, it was legally catastrophic. Daniel's phone contained 2 years of messages that read like a criminal handbook for workplace discrimination. Photos taken without consent, detailed plans to block female promotions, rating systems for women's bodies that would make a middle school boy cringe. The Evaluation Committee had documented their own crimes with the dedication of amateur historians. The board didn't hesitate. Daniel and his 3 conspirators were terminated immediately, not resigned, not given severance packages, fired for cause, which meant they lost everything. Their company stock options, their retirement benefits, their professional reputations, gone in a single afternoon. But here's where it gets interesting. The company's legal team went into overdrive trying to contain the damage. They knew this story could destroy Morrison and Associates if it went public. Sexual harassment lawsuits, federal discrimination charges, criminal prosecutions for the illegal photography. The financial exposure was in the millions. Sarah Chen called me into her office 2 days after the terminations. She looked exhausted, like someone who'd been staring at evidence of human depravity for too long. The folder on her desk was even thicker now. "Laura," she said, her voice carefully measured, "we need to discuss your future here." My heart sank. Was I getting fired too? Had speaking up somehow made me a liability? Then she smiled, actually smiled. "The board has asked me to offer you Daniel's position as managing partner." The words didn't compute at first. Managing partner? Daniel's corner office with the view of downtown, the position that controlled hiring, promotions, and company direction, the job I'd never even dared to dream about? "Your glass ceiling costume was more prophetic than anyone realized," Sarah continued. "You identified the exact problem that was holding back half our workforce. The board wants someone who can lead the company through this transition and ensure it never happens again." The meeting where I accepted the position was surreal. These same executives who'd ignored years of subtle discrimination complaints were now falling over themselves to apologize and promise change. Funny how potential lawsuits clarify corporate values so quickly. My first week as managing partner was a whirlwind of policy changes, new reporting systems for discrimination complaints, transparent promotion criteria that couldn't be manipulated behind closed doors, mandatory sensitivity training that actually meant something because everyone knew why we were doing it. I kept a framed photo of my Halloween costume on my new desk, not as decoration, but as a reminder. That fragile handle with care sign had been more accurate than I'd known. Their system of control was so delicate that one costume, one investigation, one folder of evidence brought it all crashing down. The female employees who'd been held back for years suddenly found opportunities opening up. Promotions that had been blocked mysteriously became available. The boys' club atmosphere evaporated overnight when the boys got arrested. Daniel's criminal trial starts next month. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly Morrison & Associates became a case study in how hidden discrimination gets exposed. Business schools are using our situation as an example of what not to do. The irony is beautiful. My corner office has windows on 2 sides now. Natural light floods in, where artificial barriers used to exist. Sometimes I look out at the city skyline and think about glass ceilings, how they seem solid until someone applies the right pressure in the right place. The fragile warning on my costume wasn't about the ceiling itself. It was about the men who'd built it. One investigation was all it took to shatter their entire world. 6 months later, I was giving a presentation to the company board when Jake Morrison walked in. Remember Jake, Daniel's nephew who got my creative director job with 8 months of experience? He'd been quietly transferred to our Portland office after the scandal broke. Apparently, nepotism looks bad when your uncle gets arrested for running a discrimination ring. The transformation at Morrison & Associates exceeded everyone's expectations. Female promotions increased by 300% in the first quarter. Not because we lowered standards, but because we removed the artificial barriers that kept qualified people stuck. Turns out, women are pretty good at their jobs when men aren't actively sabotaging them. Who knew? Sarah Chen got promoted to Chief Human Resources Officer. She deserved it after exposing the conspiracy that could have destroyed us all. We joke now that HR finally became the department that protects employees instead of protecting the company from employees. Progress looks different than I expected. Daniel's trial ended last week. Guilty on all charges. 2 years in federal prison, plus he's paying damages to every woman affected by his evaluation committee. The judge called it one of the most systematic cases of workplace discrimination she'd ever seen. His lawyers tried arguing that rating female employees' bodies was just locker room talk. That defense worked about as well as you'd expect. The other 3 managers took plea deals, career over, reputations destroyed. Funny how quickly powerful men become unemployable when their crimes go public. My Halloween costume became legendary around the office. New employees hear the story during orientation. The facilities team even hung a small replica in the lobby with a plaque reading, "Sometimes the most fragile thing in a room is the person trying to look strong." Yesterday, a young graphic designer named Maria approached me about feeling stuck in her position. Same situation I faced 4 years ago. Talented, dedicated, watching less qualified colleagues advance while she remained invisible. But now she has something I didn't have back then. She has a system that works, clear promotion criteria, transparent processes, someone in management who remembers what it feels like to be overlooked. I approved her promotion this morning. The glass ceiling in my office is gone now, replaced with an open skylight that floods the room with natural light. Some barriers exist until someone points out they're not really there. Others need to be shattered with evidence, determination, and occasionally, federal prosecutors. My costume was right about one thing. The whole system was fragile. It just needed the right pressure applied in exactly the right spot.